What's going on, guys? Kyle and Logan here, Blacklisted Voice, episode 23, and we are going to dive into weaknesses and kind of mindset behind weaknesses, training weaknesses, um, how we look at progressing weaknesses, and just kind of like what progress in weakness might look like. So, um, Logan, thanks for coming on as usual.
Yeah, man. Yeah, excited to kind of get into this and get a little dive a little deep into just weakness work, how to approach it and how it affects training and in the short and long term. So
Yeah.
excited to delve into this.
Yeah. You are you drinking a soda again tonight?
No, I'm actually drinking water. So
Oh shoot.
yeah, it's weird. I'm not used to this humidity. It's like it's cold, but I still I wear enough clothes to sweat, so I'm really sweaty. So I'm still losing a lot of fluids. But back where I used to train, it would be cold, but it's really dry. So I really wouldn't sweat very much. So it's kind of like it's been different to get used to. Like it's
Yeah.
cold, but like my clothes are soaked. So then I get colder after I work
Yeah,
out.
that's the worst.
It's weird.
Worst. In the Marine Corps, we would patrol in Okinawa in like 60-degree weather, which is like cold there. So you were
Yeah.
like freezing cold.
Yeah.
But you would sweat during your patrol, and then you would stop and like
Yeah.
oh man, it was cold.
Yeah, I remember you saying how humid it was there.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So I totally understand that. But cool. So where do you want to kind of start this off at?
I would say, just kind of get into the mindset of weakness work and kind of working on weaknesses and kind of the connotation that everyone seems to have on it. Whether that be good, bad, or indifferent. I think to some people working on weaknesses is kind of like a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I need to work on my weaknesses to get better at CrossFit
Yeah.
or whatever sport that you're in. But what that looks like to actually get better at them, some people I think are a little bit lacking. Like it takes working on your weaknesses pretty much all the time to get them to the point of even being like decent at it.
Yeah.
There's like you're never really gonna be elite in your weaknesses. Now
Yeah.
you might be able to get to the point where you're elite compared to maybe people that are average, but like I think going into it, especially in a sport like CrossFit where people are getting really good, you kind of need to have some like realistic expectations of what weakness work is going to look like in that you're pretty much going to always be, your strengths are always going to be your strengths. I'm never going to, for me example, I'm never going to be as aerobic as I am good at snatching. It's never going to happen. And I
Mhm.
think just knowing that you have to work extremely hard to just bring the floor up on your weaknesses is something that needs to happen before you kind of go down that road, because you're going to get pretty frustrated if, hours, days, months, years go by and, you've been sitting on a rower or doing aerobic progressions for all that time and you're still not, at the top aerobically. Well, of course not, because it's not what you were physiologically, equipped to be good at. But just knowing that it's going to take all that time and just for you to just be good enough at them, you just kind of need to know that that's kind of the goal, or it's going to have to be worth it to put in all that work just to not be bad at it.
Yeah. So like when you have an athlete who you're like working on their weaknesses, or like you address some of their weaknesses in testing, maybe like how are you setting those expectations? Like, are you like, hey, this is what ability level like I think you could get to, and this is where we want to bring your weaknesses up to, or what level we want to bring your weaknesses up to, or like how are you trying to like give them comparison or data? Does that kind of make sense? Or
So the best way that I like to put it is thinking about it like their weaknesses as like a qualifier or like the open or something like that, and
Yeah.
kind of explain it to them. Okay, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. You've done the open, you've done the qualifier. Now it's just kind of look at it from a points perspective. Okay, so if say you're really really strong and that's worth, let's just say it's a qualifier, and you finish 5th or 10th in it, and you get a lot stronger and you finish, you go up 5 or 6 places. Okay, that's 5 or 6 points, okay, from
Right.
your total. But if you work on your other weakness, it might be really really bad, but you put some work in on it, that might jump you up 50 spots.
Mhm.
So like overall it brings you up way way higher. And just working on your weaknesses, even if your strengths come down a little bit, is overall going to make you a better athlete. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to working on weaknesses with clients, I kind of explain to them kind of what their strengths are, and you know where their, I guess, potential could go if they work on their weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, man, you have this, this, and this. A lot of people would kill to have those abilities. All you got to do is work on this, this, and this. And I mean, you're going to be in a pretty awesome place. Like, you don't even have to worry about getting stronger on your snatch. You don't even have to worry about getting your squat better. You don't have to worry about increasing your capacity for wall balls or double unders. You just
Right.
have to work on these things, and that's it. And your ability level will skyrocket, and potential within the sport. So I think a lot, like putting weaknesses in like a positive connotation, while telling the athlete that they are good enough, goes a long ways. Because I think a lot of people, they're kind of scared that, Matt Fraser said it, and I've felt these exact same thoughts before. Like, I have the perfect training cycle. I have, all the right coaches. I stay healthy. I go to my competition and I'm just not good enough. Like, I literally lack the ability to be where I want to be. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people struggle with that fear. And so I think your job as a coach, not to pump them up like artificially, or, tell them that they're better at that, than they are, but rather, okay, here's your abilities. If you work on these things, then you're going to be able to achieve or get close to what you want to. And a lot of people are like, all right, that gives me a lot of hope and understanding of my abilities and the direction of my training. And it kind of makes you, at least in my experience, it's made athletes and myself work a little bit harder, because you kind of have a more clear goal or understanding of how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, especially if you don't have a coach, you don't really know what those, few things are, that you're going to have to work on to really improve.
Right.
So it's kind of like you're working on everything. And that's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
you said it the other day, really well. You said like a lot of athletes are going to have like those 1, 2, maybe 3 things that they just have to work on their entire career, and
Yep.
spend a majority of their training in those things, very often, because
Yeah.
that's just not the things that they were built to be good at. So
Right.
that's just how it's going to be,
Yeah.
and it kind of sucks because like you don't get to do the things that, you like to do a lot in training, because you just don't need to. And if your goal is to compete, um, then that's what your training needs to look like.
Mhm.
But I like, what I like to say is, you can either have fun in training, or you can have fun out on the floor competing.
Yeah.
And um, you kind of have to choose to a certain extent, as to where, doesn't mean you don't have fun in training, but you kind of got to choose which one is going to be more enjoyable for you.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah,
because
it could
just
be. It's like to compare like with other sports is like, you could just go out and play pickup basketball all the time and like,
yeah,
yeah, fun, and like that's kind of like practicing CrossFit or like maybe you're really good, like maybe you were gifted with the ability to dunk a basketball, and you could like go into the gym and like do these crazy dunks all the time. But
Yeah.
neither of those two things are going to put you closer, if it's your goal, like closer to playing on like your high school team or your collegiate team or in the NBA or whatever level you're trying to achieve. So it's like,
Right.
you have to separate yourself from those things and figure out, what areas of your game or in CrossFit, like what areas you have to kind of like work on to, get to that point. I
Yeah.
think, sorry to caveat off of that, but I think that's where a lot of people like get confused with CrossFit is like, yes, it is a workout program and yes, it's supposed to be fun. But at the same time, if you have sports goals, there are certain aspects of it that you have to probably work on for like your whole career.
Right. Right. It's like that continuum that I think you made a post maybe 2 weeks ago. It's like when you first get into sport, like your training is very specific in what you need to get better at. And then as you progress, you kind of get a little bit more general. So like maybe just working on muscle ups, handstand push-ups, name the movements, just working on everything to get really sufficient in everything. And then as you get progressively better and better in the sport, working on the little minute details, and you're back to where it's very specific. So like what that can mean is like working on movement speed, or now it's not burpees, it's how fast are you doing the burpees, or how fast are you transitioning between XYZ, or how fast can you do 50 double unders as opposed to just doing 50 double unders unbroken.
Are
So
you using like a drag rope or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't get that. They're just like, oh, if I just do more work, then it's just gonna get everything better. Sometimes it actually, it might not take more, I want to say, exertion, but it might take more, you might feel like it takes more work, but it's not going to take more exertion when you get to that, top level. I mean, if you're, I would say from what I've seen, like college football practices are a lot more grueling than like NFL, because like once you get to the NFL, your body has aged a little bit. And then you're also getting the point where the details just matter that much more because everyone's good. And just concentrating on like those little things is what's going to be the difference, rather than just having a really tough, grueling practice and being more mentally tough than the other opponent. Because when you get to that level, everyone's mentally tough. Everyone is gifted, everyone, they have to either perform or they don't get paid. So
I used to,
that's kind of how I look at it a little bit.
Yeah, when I first started coaching, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this philosophy, but when I first started coaching, I used to tell people that you should go through like a year, maybe year and a half training period where you're like kind of overtraining almost, just so you can touch on so many different things. And then from there, you can kind of figure out what your weaknesses are and just kind of like dial it in. So I think like right now we're kind of getting down into the breakdown of like specifically working on your, like figuring out your weaknesses. But yeah, it's like, you could just keep doing those, like in reference to your college and versus NFL, like you could just keep doing the workouts where like you beat yourself down and continually beat yourself down. And like, maybe you're not paying attention to the details as much. And like, you'll probably see some people like really thrive on that. But I would say probably more often than not, you're going to see dudes just get broken. And then you're going to have the people who are paying attention to the details and like really hammering out their footwork on, double unders, or hammering out their footwork on burpees, or figuring out how to pull themselves down a little bit faster on a burpee, that are just going to beat you exponentially. And like, you might look at them and you're like, well, they're not as talented as me. Like, what is going on here? But it's like those little details that they're paying attention to have now made them that much better than you. So like, so I think like the college reference like is probably like a little bit closer to that like overtraining period where you can like figure things out. But there's a point in time where you need to definitely step back. And I think this is where the coach comes in handy, and like, you're not just doing CrossFit all the time, but you're stepping back and being like, I'm bad at cycling, squat cleans at 155 pounds. And it's like, and then taking a step back and being like, well, why am I cycling them versus just bad at cycling them versus just ramming your head into the wall. And you're like, oh, well, your squat clean's 185 pounds. So like, maybe we need to drive your strength metrics up, which is a weakness of yours. So it's sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I just think as far as like a little bit more of just the psychology behind working on weaknesses is learning to be really reflective of your performances in training and in competitions is going to enable, especially if you're working with a coach, is going to enable you to get better at your weaknesses and really have more specific. Because I remember like when I first started with you as my coach, like there's some things where you would ask and I was like, I don't know. Like I mean, every time, I do muscle ups, if I can't get any more, it's just because I can't get up there. I don't know I don't know which muscle group is not, activating properly. So I think a lot of that's it. Like, and some people catch on a little bit quicker than others, like I have a client that I've been working with that's only been like for 2 weeks, and like he already tells me like his limitations and stuff like that, which is great.
It's crazy that some people are just that much more in tune with their body than cause like I know I had that problem. Like when Max was coaching me, he'd be like, give me some more details on this stuff. And I'd be like, I don't know, I couldn't go any harder and it fucking sucked. Like I get pissed. Like, so like I know like that was a huge learning curve for me. So do you have any idea why like people are more in tune like that? Or
I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's, man, like some people just naturally, like this guy that I'm talking about, he was like, would it be better for you if I just told you the limiter for every workout? And I was like, yeah, but then like there's sometimes I think it's your job as a coach to like get them to just tell you a little bit more
like the
about
questions that you ask.
Like if your grip was blowing up, like are you more talking about your forearms or your biceps, or like when when you were doing ring muscle ups, was it more your chest or your triceps that were giving out on the dip? So like or like even some athletes are really good at kind of remembering, every time I do muscle ups with strict handstand push-ups, my chest blows up or my triceps blow up. There's some athletes that are just like a little bit more in tune. And I don't know, I think maybe sometimes it's athletes that are like naturally like maybe more, I don't know, maybe more competitive. So they're like always trying to gain an edge. Like after a workout, they're like, okay, they did this really well, I didn't do this really well. Because that's how I kind of was. Like I remember when I first came and got a coach, I was like, I've been doing this blog every single time. I don't know why deadlifts and rowing are together. It blows me up and my score sucks, So sometimes I think that's a little bit of it. And just wanting to always wanting to get better.
That'd be something interesting to dive into, like the analytical side of like the athlete and like the pattern recognition side, like how you were able to recognize like deadlift and rowing a little bit easier. And I think probably at the elite level, they start to recognize the patterns a little bit more, like overhead squat and muscle up. Like my muscle ups die out because my shoulders are stabilizing so much. So I wonder if there's something to do with like pattern recognition with that, or like just like how people are able to like develop analyzing the sport a little bit better, if that makes sense.
I would definitely agree. And just because every time I either get a tester or I doing a workout, I try to find it somewhere. some type of data on it, and then kind of like compare, and then just kind of see, where that falls. But yeah, I just think really breaking it down, and I think a lot of people just comparing it to where you want to be. Like,
Yeah.
like you've said, having, clients, oh, I'm really good at, chest bars or muscle ups. And then, they want to be at a certain level, but like what they think is proficient, it's not to that level yet.
Yeah.
So
So
I
do
think
you
it's just kind of being a student of the sport a little bit.
Yeah. So do you think like the athlete, and I guess this gets into a little bit of like the psychology of working on your weakness. Like, do you think the athlete that thinks they're like really good at something, but they're like, there's a huge gap from where they want to go,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little bit harder for them to work on weaknesses, or like, it's gonna be a little bit harder to develop their psychology behind working on the weakness, or
Hmm. I think that they're just you're gonna have to have like an honest conversation with them just about just ability level in general. Like, I think if they think that something is proficient but it's not, like, I mean, what does that mean when it's actually a weakness to them? Like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
that's something I'm definitely not good at. So I think just having little things in there to like not totally shut them down to where, oh, like, that's due to your skill set, that's for sure a strength of yours, but I think we could even drive it up more, and or
yeah,
to like get to that level. We need to get to here. I think you can do it because you haven't really ever been through like a proper progression. But it's just some things that we'll need to just, kind of work on, and give them like little things like, oh, well, that weakness isn't, it's a lot easier to work on than this weakness. So,
yeah.
it should be a quick fix, not a quick fix, but like a little bit easier to,
Yeah, we might be able to like
thing to
focus a
improve.
cycle on it, and then like all of a sudden you're up to where you need to be.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, yeah, versus like spending like the whole year working on
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, because a lot of people can get really disheartened about testing and weakness work,
Yeah,
and because I've been there where I mean, even elite athletes, like giving
yeah,
them a ton, someone that's not used to lots of machines, give them a lot of machines, and they're just like, oh my gosh, like
yeah,
I'm not very good at this, and then it just
yeah,
like goes downhill. So sometimes, like, I've gone away from, like, I've kind of given more of a uh not just all weakness testers, maybe throw a little bit of like something that, maybe just more general stuff,
hmm,
just so they don't feel like it's just like a snowball effect, and by the last day they're just like at 50%, or just have like a little bit more of a, maybe not have as much testing on their weaknesses, maybe just have
yeah,
like a more
like a very
general.
specific one or something where
Yeah.
it's like they're not,
Yeah.
they feel like they're not good at toes to bar, just like have them test like a 5-minute AMRAP of toes to bar or something.
Right. Right. Because a lot of those are a lot of those that aren't like standard testers, like something that me or you would know what's a good 5-minute AMRAP for chest bars, toe to bar, handstand push-ups, strict handstand push-ups, muscle ups. But to the average, even competitive athlete, they might have a good idea,
Yeah,
but it's nothing like a row, or it's nothing like a mile run where there's like, you pretty much know.
yeah,
Some of those are a little bit easier, uh, kind of on the psychology, of it all, and they're just not really that mentally hard. I know a lot
yeah,
of people are like tapped out after they do like a 30-minute row, and then it's kind of tough because it's like they do this really hard thing, and then you tell them that, they tell you your score, and then they kind of ask, where do we need to be, and then you basically tell them something that says they're way off, and they're like,
yeah. I've so like to get I used to do that with people like I'd give them a test, and then they might ask for like a score or something like that. I guess this is a little bit of a tangent here, but
Yeah.
I actually started getting away from doing that with most people.
Yeah.
Just because like when they do hear they're way off, like that is just such a mind fuck for them. And
Yeah.
like, I'd rather tell them like, this is like you did good here, like our next goal is this.
Yeah.
And like that's what we're gonna work on doing. And like, if they ask like what so and so gets on the workout, like I'll tell them, and then they might be like, whoa shit,
Yeah.
but just and you had mentioned this before we started, but like just kind of reinforcing like, these are the small little things that we want to check off along the way.
Yeah.
Is like where I go with things, and only if the individual like asks like, what did so and so get on this? And this doesn't mean for all my clients to start fucking asking me
Yeah.
what elite athletes get on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just giving you like small kind of check marks to like, chip away at is kind of
Yeah.
like where I go with people that
Yeah.
at least that's what I've been doing now. It'll probably change in the future and like
Yeah.
change depending on who the individual is.
Yeah. And I think if you really can do it, something that I've been doing even recently is like, hey man, like you might have had that score, but like this is my score now, and my score when I first started wasn't too far off yours. And I
Right.
think that
Yeah.
gives people a lot of motivation, because they're like, oh, like it's not like this was like, they see someone that's maybe at the elite level and just think that like they were just graced with all this like athletic.
Yeah. Come in snatching like 275,
Right.
325. Yeah.
So if you can tell them like, hey, I used to be where you were and now I'm here, they're like, oh, it makes it a lot more realistic. Even
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they're like, it's a long road. But like, I feel like that's why a lot of people, the biggest reason why a lot of people don't want to put all of their energy into working on weaknesses is because there's no guarantee that it's going to pay off. And
Yeah.
I would say in like any
So
aspect.
you think that's the biggest like psychological limiter is like you're just unsure of if it's going to pay off or not.
Yeah. I think that with a lot of things like that, like fully like entrenching yourself and going for it scares people, because like they don't know for sure. But I think that's just like working and being able to get where you want to get. That has to be something like really going after it regardless of the results. Because if there's some people, if you don't put everything that you have into it, you just need to put everything you have into it just to have a chance, So if you never do that, then you're not going to improve where you need to improve. And I get it that it is scary. But I think that's a lot where like the coach athlete trust relationship comes in. And we talked about it on another podcast, but like kind of giving the athletes like little victories to be like, oh, if I work, things are going to improve.
Actually,
so I'll keep working at it.
I heard this quote today. It was actually on like a football podcast that I was listening to while I was working, but it was greatness takes guts, and it takes a lot of guts to step into something not knowing if it's gonna like get you better or not. And so like, I think the individual that really wants to improve, and that is kind of like the mindset that you have to have is like, look, I don't like, this is going to be scary because like I'm stepping away from things that I'm really good at. A lot of people that might be like strength work, some people that might be aerobic work. And so, but I know that where I want to go, if I can follow this path and stick to these kind of weaknesses, or like this work, and this style of training, it will get me to where I want to go in the sport. And a lot of that just takes like, stepping into the unknown takes a lot of guts to say like, I think that's like one of the mindsets that you have to have around like getting people to start working on their weaknesses is like really getting that buy-in from them, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. It's like at the elite level, athletes throw themselves 100% at anything that might make them better.
Yeah.
Might
Yeah.
make them better. Now, a intelligent person knows how to like decipher which things are actually going to make me better, and they have people that are on
Oh,
their
I think
team that
Logan's lagging here a little bit. Oh, your sound went out for a second there.
oh
Is it
they
back?
have yeah.
No, it's not back. Connection unstable. Hold on, guys. We're technical difficulty. Do you want to try and leave and come back in?
Is it still not working?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but I think elite athletes in any sport kind of throw themselves at anything 100% just because it might give them that extra inch. Now, they're an intelligent athlete is going to have people on their team and ways to kind of decipher the things that they actually need to work on.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a good mindset to have is like, even the people at the top don't know for sure if it's
Right.
gonna make the difference, but they do it because it might.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a documentary on it's called The Price of Gold, and it's a little bit it's kind of a little bit depressing, but it's just basically kind of the depression that Olympic athletes kind of go through after the Olympics, and they kind of talk about it in the beginning, just the obsession that the athletes have to have because the difference between you getting gold and basically making a career out of your sport, and fourth place is like hundredths of a second, and so like you
Yeah.
have to be like that obsessed with improvement because that's all it is.
Right.
um
Right.
so I think that's that just how that applies to weaknesses is you can't just go about it in kind of like a lax way. You have to for sure be all
Yeah.
in improving.
And I think one thing too that might help some like psychology around like going to bat to work on your weaknesses, like, if you're doing something great, it probably means that no one has done it before. So the path to get to that is going to be like unknown. And you kind of have to step into that unknown realm of like,
Yeah.
you know, Frazier, he won the fifth one this year. So like no one's ever done that before. His path looked totally different than Froning's did. Same thing with Tia. Like her path looked totally different than Briggs and Katrin, who had previously won two. Like you have to be willing to step into an unknown realm and try unknown things to get to I don't want to call it greatness, but to get to improvement sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people are going to have like kind of like that recipe for part of their career. Like we know if we give you this, like the outcome is going to be this. But not all the time, and especially when you're starting to push boundaries and push limitations inside of a human being, is you have to step into unknowns and be comfortable stepping into an unknown, or accept stepping into an unknown.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a lot of psychology that top athletes have, is they're okay with stepping into that unknown to accept whatever outcome comes out of that.
Right.
And like that can be a scary thing, and that might be why some people kind of shy away from working on weaknesses, because it is a little bit of an unknown and there isn't like a set outcome to things.
Right.
But if you're like continually working on things that you're good at, like it's at least still relatively fun.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
you can take your Instagram videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that even if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it means you're definitely not going to do that thing anymore to improve it. Well, you got to
Right.
look somewhere else. So like, even if it doesn't work, then it doesn't mean that it was a waste. It's just, it's even narrowing the margin for error even more for every
Yeah.
kind of thing that may not work. It's hard when it doesn't work, but it's not, all lost.
Yeah. It's not like a success or failure type output. There's always something to be learned off of what
Right.
you're doing in training.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, if, we did like a bench press cycle to get my burpees better and it worked, But
Yeah.
if you were to give it to someone else that was struggling on burpees, it might not work, So
Right.
if say you gave it to them and it didn't work, well, then you could say, okay, well, horizontal pressing wasn't really the issue for burpees. It's probably something else,
Yeah. Yep. I've done that with countless people. Like we've worked on one thing. I shouldn't say countless, but I've definitely done that with people
all the time.
yeah. Where we've worked on like a certain aspect of it, and like we went and retested something, and it was like, oh, well, definitely have to go back to the drawing board on that one and try and reconfigure. And like maybe in the testing, you see something a little bit different that you have to work on. But it's all that's kind of like part of the process too. Like if everyone were to follow like the perfect route to success, like it would almost be, instantaneous and there would be no mistakes. But like there's almost always mistakes like on the route to success. I mean, like look at Tom Brady, like he was drafted in the 7th round for because I think he like it seemed like he didn't care at like Michigan or something like that. But like, look at him now. Like what would have happened if he had been drafted in the 1st round, So like there's always mistakes along the way, and like it's always just like you always want to kind of take those as learning processes though.
It's like I don't know who said it, but it's like if your coach says that they have all the answers, you need to find another coach.
Yeah, that's a good. I forget who
I
said
love that one.
Yeah.
But it's like it's so true. It's like no one, people have like general like paths that they're gonna put you on that lead to like general improvements. But like at the end of the day, especially when you're getting to the elite level, like
you're stepping into the unknown again. Like you're gonna try things and like they might work, they might not work, or you might have an idea. But it's like stepping into that unknown. So like that's tough to like give answers of like, hey, this is gonna work. And it's like, have you done it before? No. How do you know? But yeah. I think too, like at least from like a psychological standpoint, like trying to find enjoyment inside of working on your weaknesses is a huge thing. And for me, it was always gymnastics that I was working on in the sport. So like I always enjoyed finding like new technical components and like the movement feeling different. And it's kind of different for everyone. So like so that would be kind of like my goal stepping into like gymnastics workouts, is to get a specific feeling or to get a specific movement pattern down inside my gymnastics. And that's kind of like how I approach gymnastics to make it a little bit more fun for me, was like finding the feeling of movement. It might look different for everybody. Like I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head, but you might have some, Logan.
Yeah, and I would say having a more realistic goal on a daily basis on the outcome, and just having more process oriented goals, and knowing that it's going to take a long time, but like there's things along the way that I can do that are going to make it better. And just a general like outlook on your work. So like there might be some days where like for me today, like I did a workout with burpees in it. We've been working on burpee speed a lot, and I was like, okay, today I really need to get better at burpee speed. It's not my capacity is fine. I can do a lot of them at a slow pace. So today I'm going to work on going fast. And maybe that got me a better score. Maybe it didn't. But today I did all of them at a fast cadence. And so like that is a weakness for me that I did today that I can have like a positive check mark next to, where I did something where it was actually not only a weakness movement, but the weakness version of it. So like not only burpees, but doing them fast. That would be like almost a double weakness. So I chose to do that, and afterwards it felt a lot better. And I think just having like the state of mind to be like, I got something out of today, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to like a hard goal. Like, did I accomplish, a PR in my 5-minute burpee test? No, I didn't, but I did something today that's going to make it better,
Yeah.
in the long run. So I think just having that state of mind that, um, this is going to take me a long time to achieve,
Hmm.
but then also every single day asking yourself, what could have I done today better to accomplish that goal?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think just having patience and knowing that it's going to take time, and having kind of process oriented goals along the way. So like, even for me, like with deadlifts, like, okay, today I'm going to really work on activating my lats. Instead, I'm going to take some tension off my lower back. I'm really going to learn how that feels today. Maybe, it might not make the workout better, but I know in the long run it's going to make my deadlifts better.
Yeah.
I think there was a time where uh I was like, you know what, my first pull is just super slow off the ground on deadlifts. I'm gonna deadlift for like 6 weeks with like a 1 inch deficit, and it felt a lot better. It was just like a little tweak that made it feel better
Yeah.
once I took it away. So just like little things like that, and just kind of putting your ego aside training day to training day, and
Yeah.
realizing that it's going to be a lot better 8 weeks from now rather than
Right.
2
Right.
or 3 days, or
Right.
even that training day.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it isn't better in 8 weeks from now, like you at least figured out what doesn't work, and now you can come back to the drawing board and like do something that will be a little bit more directed and will work.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like kind of like, yeah, I think like you were saying, like finding those wins inside the day, each and every day is huge towards like checking each day off towards that goal and like the
Right.
long-term success of the actual weakness that you're trying to work on. And like
Right.
it's that is something that I think is very difficult for people, but like man, again, it's just like breaking it down, like finding the minute thing, like, on my third 500-meter row interval, I felt like I was pulling the rower handle like really efficiently or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
small things like that, and then just focusing in on that. And I think that leads to like more like positive emotions from the session. And I think that positive emotions have a huge impact on actual adaptation from the session too. So like
Yeah.
walking away from the session with positive emotions, it I think there have actually been studies on this. Don't quote me on that. That could be totally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like that actually leaving things with a positive feeling creates like better adaptation around a training session. So like
Oh
when you
yeah.
find those wins, like it's more likely that you are going to adapt, and 8 weeks down the road you are going to have that successful adaptation that you were looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure agree. And just, I think coming into every training day just like humble and ready to do what it takes to improve upon whatever you have, kind of for that training day,
Yeah.
and having the discipline, I would say, because this is something I've recently had to work on, kind of breaking movements down to maybe even make them harder in training, but make them more technically proficient in training. And then when you get out to competitions, then you can kind of just do whatever makes it easier. Like for me, like I always like step up with the same foot on burpees. And then
Mhm.
like I noticed that it was like making my hip and one side of my back super tight. So I had to recently just learn how to step up with both.
Yeah, yeah.
Or I know a lot of people like do a double overhand grip in training just so they don't have any like overcompensations on one side of their back. But then once they get to competitions, they do a mixed grip. And then, with even touch and go barbell stuff, it's a lot easier to kind of keep your hips higher and use a little bit of your lower back. Kind of, I mean, it takes a little bit of pressure off the quads. But in training, if you do that a lot with lots of reps, then it's eventually going to blow your back up.
You're already
And
pulling a ton.
yeah, and you're all pulling a ton. And then another thing, like with rowing, especially guys and myself included, it's a lot easier to row with a lot of upper back. But like if you do that a lot, then if you ever get in a situation where you're with other pulling movements, upper body pulling movements, then you're going to blow up. And you got to realize that if you're ever rowing a 5K or a 2K, you can't pull with all upper back the entire time. So just making sure you're hinging properly and activating your glutes and your lats, pulling down on the handle is really important, which it might seem harder in training, but once you get to competition, you can kind of what feels easier, so you can do it then, but not in training.
Like training, the purpose of training is to get better for the competition floor, and
Right.
you can compensate when you're on the competition floor for a better score, but it's better to elicit better technique and more maybe not efficient technique for a score, but efficient as far as like durability and sustainability. And that will lead you to more training, and more consistent training, because you're not getting injured, which leads to better results, which leads to you experiencing like success on the competition floor.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think so. Like, I think we've chatted a lot about like how to like assess movements. Like, I think we've chatted about it without like actually touching on the subject here. But like like as far as like a coach goes, like we've chatted about like goals for like winning the session and goals for the session and stuff like that. Like, how does a coach help you kind of like see that progress and see, because I think you might have mentioned this already, but I know you'd said it before, like a lot of people need kind of like that progress picture, if that makes sense, to help them continue to work on their weakness. So like, how exactly do you think a coach helps you with that?
I think being really just really having the ability to kind of trace back to small improvements. So like one of my clients, when we first started about 6 weeks ago, his max wall balls were like 27. And then on Monday, he hit a workout that was 3 rounds, and he did the first 3 rounds of like 30 wall balls, and I think it might have been 30 burpees. And he did the first 2 rounds unbroken. So like he did 3 more wall balls twice than his old PR was. And I think like as a coach being like, hey, like, look at what you did. Like, and that's like another topic of being attentive as a coach, but like, look, like 27 used to be your PR, and now you just did 30 twice in a workout. So like you're coming a long ways. And like sometimes athletes don't even know that. Sometimes athletes, they don't keep track of that kind of stuff. So like a coach can just really have those like process oriented goals, or maybe an athlete, whether it was the right strategy or not, say they had muscle ups and they went like there was 20 and they did 10 5 5, and their PR ring muscle ups are 12, and you're like, hey, like you might have been maybe it wasn't the right strategy, but look, you did 10 ring muscle ups in a workout after all that. That's been a great progress. Or telling like athletes like, hey, I saw that you kind of went deep into that workout on the muscle ups or on the wall balls or something like that. Like I like how you attacked the workout as far as like going for it, because that's what training is for. But here's maybe how you could have done it better to get like a better score. But just kind of reflecting back to progress made in the past, and kind of different, like we were saying, like you might have concentrated on different aspects, or you might have like sometimes you might put in a design like, I want you to do these unbroken, or I want you to really concentrate it on this today. Don't worry about the other stuff. Worry about this. So you can kind of like put in your athletes in the right frame of mind before they go into the piece. rather than after, or just kind of hoping that they'll be able to see that when you can, like not knowing that they PR'd a movement inside a
Yeah.
workout. So I think that's really good. And I think I've had some athletes where it might have been like maybe a heavy snatch, or like it ended on a heavy snatch, or maybe it was like some type of ladder where it was like, hey, like you might have not hit a PR, but like you hit this after a workout, or you may have not hit that 265 bar, but your max is only 255 and you hit 245 4 times. So like that's something to be proud of. So I think I think putting the athletes in a positive frame of mind, like you said, where you get more out of a training session if you have that afterwards. So I think kind of coming along and saying, you did this really well, and kind of helping that positive frame of mind goes a long ways. And like, the biggest thing that I want to be is like real with an athlete. So it's not like every single, like sometimes you just have bad days,
Right.
But I think even then can end on a positive note. Like, hey, like you might have had a bad day, but how you're going to ultimately achieve what you want to achieve is by showing up every single day.
Yep.
Even when you have bad days. So like, take some pride in having a bad day and finishing the work and coming back another day. So even like anything can have a positive spin on it. It's just the outlook of which you look at it.
Right. Yeah. And I think like, so, you take like a data approach to it, like kind of like you were talking about, like the 10-5-5 muscle ups, and like maybe your 3-minute max was like, 15, and all of a sudden you're doing 20 inside of a 7-minute workout or something like that, like, with extra work in there. So it's like, I think that's like a huge takeaway and a huge win. And one thing I always try and like look at for athletes is like, consistency in movement, or like their movement patterns. And I think that's probably one of the harder things to like get people to buy into, is that movement, like your movement quality is improving. It takes like a very fine eye to see that. But once you can like be like, hey, like, go back to X date and like look at your chest to bars there, and look at them now, like look at how much more you're using your hips in this movement, and look at how much like, like this is going to lead to efficiency down the road. And like that too will help them be like, oh, I'm getting more efficient at this movement. Like it's only a matter of time before I hit a PR on, what a 5-minute tester, or 21:59 or something like that on their chest to bars. And I think that is like helpful too. It's a little bit harder to communicate to the athlete, especially if they're not looking at it. They're only data driven, but eventually if you're seeing like improvement in movement, you'll see that improvement in a tester come out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Consistency within movement, especially within CrossFit, because you might be able to get away with some pretty sketch movement like once, maybe twice, but like in a workout, it with lots of reps, it's going to add up, to where you're coming down on your knee, on one knee all the time poorly. It's going to lead to an injury. Your diaphragm is collapsing when you're in a front rack. If you do that 20, 30, 40 times, you're going to be pretty out of breath. So that's just really important. A lot of people, like, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around, doing movement work, how it's going to ultimately affect me within a workout. But I mean, it does, and it does a lot. And that's a huge thing. Like even, if you really watch athletes and someone comes into your box and, does, different movements, like I could tell you, nope, they're not elite, or yeah, they are elite, pretty well, like just by watching someone, how they do a ring muscle up, or how they
even a burpee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Even
I remember
a squat clean at 135. I mean,
I remember back in the day, I think Rudy from Outlaw was talking about how like your burpee economy is a telltale sign of how good you're going to be at CrossFit or something like that.
Wow.
So
I mean, you must have a good eye
every,
for it.
everybody that hates burpees, that's making it pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can tell. I mean, something as simple as a burpee,
Yeah.
there is an elite way to do it, and there is definitely not an elite
Yeah.
way to work to do it.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, the other thing to get back to is like it is like you can develop it too. It's not
Yeah.
just like I think the big one is like watching Julie Fouché. Probably newer athletes don't know who that is, but she was a games athlete like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago now. But she like had posted videos of her snatching for the first time, and it was like not good,
Yeah.
And it was like at a lightweight. And then at regionals in 2014 or something like that, she had hang snatched like it was above like 155 pounds. So like it was a solid snatch for that time. Might have even been like 160 plus. So like there's always progress, and like she didn't look good, when she first started snatching, but over time and continually to work on it and doing drills and like getting coaching and listening to the coaching as well. She was able to elicit that at regionals. And like, I think just uh pulling from stories like that, kind of like what you were saying in the beginning of the podcast, where like from your own experience will help you to like see that, if you just keep your consistency, things are going to improve.
Right. Yeah, making athletes see that sometimes it is just work that they need to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes some people, like myself included, like that's a lot easier pill to swallow. Like I just have to work,
Yeah.
Some people might be the opposite. Like some people might say they like going, oh, I'm not, I'd rather just kind of blame it on my genetics, or blame it on I'm not physiologically equipped to deal with something like this. But like
Right.
the mindset of where all I have to do is put in the time and the work to accomplish this, or get close, because there's other people that have done it and they weren't any more gifted than I. I think it's the right mindset to have, especially in a sport like this where you do have to continually work on weaknesses so much, and where there's just so much movements and movement combinations that you have to work to be able to be at that top level.
For sure. Yeah. So cool. I don't know, you want to hit on anything else here, or?
No, man, I think we pretty much hit it. And my uh kind of just summation of like weakness work that I think is the easiest to explain is like people love doing what they're good at. If you get better at what you're not good at, it's going to make things just a lot more enjoyable. And I used to hate rowing, hate muscle ups, all that kind of stuff. It's still not my number one thing, but it's gotten a lot better, and I can say that I actually enjoy doing them now. So just like that positivity after every single training session is huge. So like if you don't work on your weaknesses, you're just always going to be bad at it, and you're going to even work on it less and less and less as the years go by.
And there's thinking back, like, there's something also to be being said is like you now never approach a workout at a competition with an anxious feeling. Like now all you're feeling is like, how am I going to execute on this workout? And like now you're worrying about where that execution is going to put you on the leaderboard. There's never like this like, oh fuck, there's double kettlebell thrusters and I can't even get these things up to my shoulders type, or like I can't stabilize these things overhead. So like getting rid of that fear and that anxiety just allows you to perform that much better at a competition because you've worked on the things that you're not good at.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely agree. And I think that's one thing that we may have not touched on, but maybe touched on
Yeah.
in other words, but like just the amount of confidence weakness work gives you is just incredible. How you
Yeah.
can show up and just be confident in your abilities, because it sucks. Like if you have a huge weakness and it pops up in a workout and you're about to do it at a competition, that is not a good feeling.
No.
Um, and it's way, trust me, that feeling is way worse than just doing it and working on it and having
Yeah,
that confidence before it. So I think that's a huge, huge thing that really working on your weaknesses can bring, is just an overwhelming confidence. And I would say with athletes that I've worked with, that's one thing that they will say is, I just feel more confident on these things.
yeah,
Um, and I'm not afraid of them anymore. So I
yep,
think that's something that can definitely bring to your game.
for sure, for sure. Well, sweet. Thanks for coming on, Logan.
Yeah, man, you bet.
Um, thanks for listening, everybody. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please make sure you follow us on Instagram. If you guys are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you follow us on Instagram. We also do some YouTube videos. We're going to start our progression meetings up here again. I just filmed one of those by myself, Logan. So we're going to start putting those out a little bit more. So if you guys want to follow us on YouTube, we do also put out some movement videos on YouTube, and some other kind of like extra content every once in a while. So thanks for listening to us, guys. If you guys have any input, please let us know in the comments of the post on our Instagram, or just send us a direct message, and we will catch you guys next time.